Greetings, everyone. It is the 18th of June, and we're delighted to have you join the PCI Community Forum. I'm Kevin Clark, and today our featured guest is David Nordfors. He is the author of the People-Centered Internet, the new ecosystem for work. And I know that this is something that Vince Cerf, certainly endorses, but this is David's book. And David, why don't you just share a little bit about your background, what kind of inspired you, to write, a thoughtful volume like this? I've read it. I agree with a lot of what you have here, have some parallel thoughts that we should share offline sometime. But today you're here for the community, and we're very glad to have you with us. Where are you joining us from?
I'm in Los Altos.
Excellent. That's a good place to be. And so the floor is yours. Once you've finished remarks, we will go to Q&A. I'll remind everyone that, if you have questions, you can put them in chat. I'll call on you as we get to the Q&A session. David, do you want people to wait, or do you want them to kind of raise their hand during your comments using, the Zoom function if they have an immediate question?
Yeah.
What's your preference?
Yes. If somebody has a good question, raise it. But also, in case I want to move forward, just don't feel insulted if I.
Yeah, that's all right. So, for those of you who have clarification questions during the presentation, use the Zoom function to raise your hand, and if we have an appropriate moment, we'll call on you. But put the rest in chat. David, the floor is yours. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Thanks for taking an interest. I mean, it's been a few years, right? So my background. Well, I mean, those of you who know me from I4J, Innovation for Jobs, and PCI once started in Innovation for Jobs as a special interest group, and it evolved. And very happy to say that when we kind of closed down the non-profit that ran I4J, then PCI took over I4J. So just as it should be, the young take care of the old. So originally, I'm a physicist from the beginning. I did my Ph.D. in quantum physics. Was a journalist for a while, science journalism. Then went into policy and policy innovation. And one of the things we did there, I've always cared a lot about language. So we identified journalists as an actors group in the innovation ecosystem, and started a program for developing innovation journalism as a beat. And we did it off campus of from the ministry, and I opened the program at Stanford University that then more countries joined, became a Stanford program, and went on until 2011 when we created I4J. And I wrote this book together with the other people, the other authors, that I spent 2018 writing it, and it was a peaceful year in many ways. I've more or less given up on raising money for I4J. I'm not very good at raising money, but I4J was great for me, and for you too, I hope. And so, and after I published the book, instead of going out on the speaker's tour, like many people should do if they want to have a job and they've written a book, I decided I wanted to kind of build the stuff that was inside. And I went into mathematics again, and I brushed up. Well, I went to boot camp and did data science, And I think I can get some bragging rights that I got my first data science job in industry at the age of 60. You know, I got very few interviews, and usually they said that wrong background, probably meaning that I had too much of it. And but then, you know, I put some app on the net I built, and then my company Bold, somebody contacted me from there, and it turned out it was spot on with, you know, what they had a vision for the future. If you're interested in that app, you can look at archetypes.ai. By the way, I can just give it, I mean, it's relevant for the context, right? Let's see if it's still up or if the demo devil, no, it's still there, actually. I'm going to share the screen here. There. So I used, and this kind of describes it. Here you have my interest for language and for the labor market and so on. And there's something called ONET, and they have like 1,000 occupations. And here is sort of each occupation, how much this occupation have of these various abilities. And there are 52 of them, I think. And this looks like a total mess. So I used something called non-negative matrix factorization to do an archetypal analysis and found that, you know, these archetypes have character. If you take only 2 types, you get body-mind type jobs. And if you take 4, then you can see each one of these 4 archetypes also has like a character, right? And so the idea is that, and I guess I could make a consulting company around this. You know, lots of consulting companies, they invent archetypes, and then they create sort of a philosophy around the archetypes and how to manage your organization with the help of these archetypes. And actually what you can do with this method is that you can build the archetypes on the fly from the data you have, so that the demographic you're working with, you will always get relevant archetypes. And this is general, you know, this is general labor market. And we have brainy, handy, strong, quick, we got, and then we can see how much each sort of occupation here is strong or quick or handy, or, you know, one can check for wage statistics for the various archetypes, and, you know, how much predictive power you get from it and so on. But anyway, I won't get stuck on that. That's what gave me my current job, and I totally enjoy it. I've become a total introvert after 5 years, and hardly meet people and only into coding. It's almost worrying. Anyhow, let's start with the people-centered economy then, and which is actually still what I'm trying to achieve through my job. I got a pretty nice position to. My job is to think out of the box and build prototypes around these new ideas that might transform the company. And since I still have a job, they've had some influence on the company at least. All right, so this is the short paper that I put the link to in the chat, right? So I hope it works for you. Could you open it? If you can't open it, then just let me know. This is the short version of the book, basically. And it's maybe only 10, 11 pages, and it gives kind of the general picture of the people-centered economy and what it's about. So you can get the message in a much shorter format than in the book, even if it doesn't contain everything. Contains a few excerpts. It actually here starts with a tribute to Karl Marx, in a way, for his historic materialism, where we kind of show that he was right in a way, because you can take the original text from the beginning of the Communist Manifesto and replace a few words here, and you get a completely readable text, right? This is 100, over 100 years old. It's 100 years old, and it's still, anyway, at the time when this was written, was pretty relevant. We could see also that internet, how the richest get richer all the time. Actually, it's only, I'd say, 3 presidents that I'd like to give credit for spreading the wealth downwards. Roosevelt, of course, big guy, Johnson, and Nixon, actually. And otherwise, otherwise it's always been wealth concentration. So, I mean, Nixon didn't do great stuff with Watergate, but if you look at his reforms, he was probably one of the more liberal presidents we had. Okay, so let's explain here what it is, the people-centered economy. So this might look a bit messy at first, but I'm gonna give a quick explanation of it. This is kind of like an analogy, right? And what it's saying is it compares to the geocentric picture of the universe versus the heliocentric picture. And the geocentric picture, everything looks very complicated. Heliocentric, everything looks very simple. And there are more analogies, but let's come back to that. What makes it difficult and what makes it simple, right? So the task-centered economy is, the value is in the tasks. You see value in tasks, right? And you have 2 markets. You have a labor market where worker kind of sells stuff to the employer, right? Sells the work to the employer. And then the consumer market, the consumer buys things from the vendor. So you earn money on the labor market and you spend it on the consumer market. And you see here the worker and the consumer are like 2 different roles, but it's like the same person, right? And the employer and the vendor, they make stuff and sell it. And here they make and there they sell, right? And so this is the way the economy looks like. You have a number of people in it, and they're kind of like embedded in an economy that then does things, right? And this is, of course, a very intuitive way of seeing it. I do stuff, I earn money, I spend it. I mean, that's the world, right? Now, the people-centered economy then, I say, simplifies this to one market. And here you have only, instead of 2 markets, labor and consumer market, you have one market that offers the person who's in the middle spending services and earning services. So you could say, here is your livelihood, and you earn on the labor market. Well, you're offered an earning service. And then you have the consumer market, while you're offered a spending service. So in the people-centered economy, the value of the economy is the value that people find in each other. And the production, services, and whatever more is what makes people find value in each other. And this is something that is a valid way of representing the economy. And indeed, it's pretty much this way that macroeconomists see it, people who work for countries and so on, but not businesses. They don't see it this way. They don't see. They don't talk about earning services very much. They help people spend their money, and they don't want to, if they have to, they pay their employees money because they have to. I mean, they would rather pay less. So, but it is a simpler picture, but people can find it non-intuitive. that it actually is that it's not the stuff I buy that's worth money. It's that I'm valuing other people by buying it, right? So what's the gain in this kind of more abstract picture? Well, back to the geocentric and heliocentric, right? So if you think about it, I mean, this is like a no-brainer today. It's heliocentric. We make fun of people who think that the Earth is in the middle or maybe even flat. But note that the geocentric picture was actually correct. There was mathematics. The Ptolemaios made the mathematics so that you actually could calculate the positions of the planets and so on. Very messy though. But okay, so let's say you wake up in the morning, you go out and you look at the sky, and it's kind of obvious to you that the sun is moving around us. And then somebody says, no, 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 we are moving around the sun. Now, that's an enormous abstraction, right? You say, well, if you were a venture capitalist back then, you would say, well, that sounds perhaps a bit academic, because I see the sun is moving around us, right? And it took a few hundred years, actually, then, and the heliocentric won. And, you know, I'd like to suggest to you that the heliocentric didn't win because it gave a simpler picture of the universe, because, frankly, I don't know if people cared that much back then. But I think that you know, the powers that embraced the heliocentric picture also embraced Newtonian mechanics. And that meant that they, for example, would have better artillery than those who didn't, because they could more easily calculate trajectories of missiles, right? So the heliocentric guys would win wars, and they would also, you know, they could also build better economies. I mean, you can build better industry with Newtonian mechanics than you can without. So I would venture to say that you have something similar here, right? Because seeing the economy this way, that you have people and then you have organizations competing to offer us spending services and earning services, is much more powerful than this kind of fraction picture where you have a labor market and consumer market, and you know, they definitely not, you know, they often have opposite incentives. So what will be required to create this type of economy then? Well, it will be required, first of all, that there was competition to provide livelihoods, and there's not, right? There are not a lot of companies that compete to offer us livelihood. And so we don't have an innovation ecosystem for offering us new livelihoods and new earning services. But we have a formidable innovation ecosystem for creating things we spend money on, right? So that's one thing. We would have to build this part. Another thing, if you're an economist, you know, if there are more jobs being offered than there are people to take them, you get wage inflation, and that's a bad thing. That you know, that doesn't work in an economy. So here comes, you know, the other requirement, and this is actually in this summary, but it's actually not in the book. So it's one of the weak parts, one of the weaknesses in the book, that it's not there. But it does require that that any job can be automated. Because, you know, let's say I have a job that nobody wants, right? And you really can't find people to do this necessary job, then of course you have to pay more for it, right? And you'll get a wage inflation for that job. Well, I'd say that if any job can be automated, well, then you'll get a greater incentive for automating that job that now is becoming very expensive and that people don't want to have, right? So, so it actually requires this, that people actually are scared of, that all jobs can disappear to automation. That becomes a requirement for being able to run a people-centered economy. So if we accept that all jobs can be automated, then we should put money into building innovation ecosystems for creating jobs, just like we, once upon a time, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago, put money into programs like SBIR or whatever. Many of the venture capital firms on Sand Hill Road have their origins in various government programs that help them get going, although they won't tell you about it. Israel definitely had the Yozma program, and they're all open about it, that helped create the Israeli venture capital industry by sort of a program that they say, hey, we want to have they had two VenCap funds, and then they say, hey, we want to have 10 more venture capital funds, and we're looking for consortia to start them. And the thing is, we will match all your money from the government, and then you'll get 5-year option to buy us out of the fund at nominal value plus interest rate after 5 years. So basically, they got all the upside and half the downside, which made it a better, better prospects for starting a fund. And all of them succeeded. All of them succeeded. So they got 10 new VenCap funds, and then they did it once more. They had 10 more. We could do something similar here, that start an innovation ecosystem for creating earning services. And that it's in the book why it's so difficult to start that today. And maybe I'll just give a quick example and then continue in on deeper into that example, actually. So let's say that you have, I invented this cup. It cost me 10 cents to make it. I go off to a venture capitalist and I said, I use this marvelous new technology to create this cup. It cost me 10 cents to make. It costs other people, 50 cents to make a cup, production value. And here is the size of the market. And hence I can capture this market because nobody can compete with this patented technology, whatever. And then they look at the numbers and they say, we'll invest in it. Good, all right? Now, think about another case. Now, I mean, this will, if you have earning services that compete to give you a job, the natural thing will be that you will have diversification. You will go for people who have underutilized resources and offer them something that they want to have and that they're good at and that they can earn enough money on. And, they don't, your services that they don't need to bother with a lot of unpleasant stuff, they take care of that for you. And you can do, the whole slogan of the people-centered economy, create a sustainable economy where we work with people we like, are valued by people we do not know, important for growing an economy, and provide for the people we love. That's what it's about. I mean, that's the goal, right? The goal is not to increase GDP or this or that. These are all indicators, right? This is the actual goal. And I'm very happy with that. With that purpose statement, right? Because that's what we need in order to have a good working society. That and a few other things, but that's the core. Okay, so let's say let's look at people with disabilities. You have large groups of people with disabilities, and I'm coming into this concept of cool abilities that I'm happy to see that PCI continued with, and I4J in PCI. And so people with disabilities often have cool abilities, right? And we know it from the computer industry that it's actually not a disadvantage in the industry to be on the spectrum. Actually, in some cases, some employers even think it's a good thing because it comes with valuable cool abilities, right? So let's say we can speak about some other group of people with cool abilities. And let's take example then, blind people, and a certain percentage of people who are blind have the ability of echolocation, which is that the brain, the visual cortex in the brain doesn't get impulses from the eyes, but it works, right? So it picks up impulses from the ears instead, and it does its stuff with those impulses, resulting in that these people experience 3D vision through sound. And most of you have probably seen this sometime. It's like a sensational thing, right? So let's say I go to a venture capitalist and I say, all right, I have found a way to tailor jobs for people who are blind and have echolocation. And you can see today they earn very little money, and I can make very high quality jobs, high paid jobs for these people with the help of my new mathematics, a way of working. And then they say, oh, that's interesting. That's very good. Well, okay, so how much will they be earning? And you say, well, I can't say that yet. We first have to create the jobs for them, of course. And then they say, well, good, you come back when you have the numbers, says the venture capitalist. Now, I mean, that's a very difficult thing to overcome. It means we have to build a system supported by government, probably, where you can verify these kind of ideas. And it can be pretty cost intensive, sorry. And all of these things kind of went into creating the innovation ecosystem we have today. We have to invest in the same way in the innovation ecosystem that innovates jobs, right? So then we have jobs that, if we look now again at the people-centered economy, and then we ask ourselves then, is AI gonna kill jobs or create jobs? Is this gonna kind of increase wealth disparity or decrease it? And suddenly, when you see it from the people-centered economy point of view, it's no longer a relevant question. The question is, do we have as much innovation for earning services as we have for spending services? Or the offers you are getting for earning a livelihood as plenty and good as the offers that you're getting for spending it? And is this system, and of course, does this system work without wage inflation as well? So if you have an overweight in spending services, meaning people are losing their jobs, it's a problem today. You can get a downward spiral, right? Companies try to spend less because they have fewer customers, and then they have to, fewer customers, less income. Well, they have to cut down even more, and it becomes like a race downwards. Now, here it's rather that you have to invest more in innovating new and better jobs for people, and then they can spend it more. So this is maybe not big news for anybody who is into national economies and macroeconomics, but I would like to kind of transfer that picture to the whole economy, also on the business and companies scale, and see it. You have entrepreneurs saying, we've got a whole lot of undervalued people here who could do very valuable things. Let's see how we can create that. And also for the earning services, very important, the earner is the customer, is the primary customer. Now, if you look at what people might suggest as earning services today, like Uber, it's actually not the driver that's the primary customer. It is the guy in the back seat who pays for the ride. So at the end of the day, you know, the driver is actually a cost, and this is and it's not a great job to be an Uber driver. Maybe it was initially a better job, but it's not a fantastic job, right? So you need to have a whole sector that focuses on the earner as the primary customer. You have spending services focuses on the spender, the same person. And you could say that you could get an economy that is uh, well, the economy then is an ecosystem of technology and organization that competes to make people more valuable to each other. That's it. So that means that I have earning services, I have spending services, and these are performed by organizations. And you know, at the back end, they somehow meet and negotiate salaries and so on. And I have somebody who represents me, my earning services. They are the ones who kind of represent me and giving me my value's worth. And if these earning service guys don't do it well, maybe there's a competing company that can do it. And you know, the government's role then is basically to provide what today is consumer services on both sides, so that you don't get lock-in on earning services and so on. Okay, so we can envision the economy as people embedded in an ecosystem of organizations and companies competing to increase the value of people, see in and create for each other. And the definition of the economy is people create and exchange value served by organizations. So by accepting sort of this, that actually it's us that are going around the sun, it's actually the people that are worth money, and it's the, you know, the things we buy and so on are just the ways that we see value in each other. Then you get, this is the picture of the economy. And for ordinary business people, this is the picture of the economy. So let's see, is that, yeah, that's that part, right? So we did this to demonstrate this, kind of, the example was to take a group of undervalued people and say that these people are actually very valuable and you could innovate jobs for them. So that's where cool abilities come in. And it was quite a shock when we were discussing this, that we were thinking, you know, maybe I4J can do something for these disabled people with enhanced abilities. And when we talked about it, we needed to have a word for these enhanced abilities. And we started thinking, and we couldn't think about anyone, right? So we had to make one up. So we took cool abilities, right, to balance the disabilities. And then we went on looking, and we could actually not find anything in literature, any keyword that represented the enhanced abilities accompanying disabling conditions. There were papers about these things, but there was no such keyword. So, which of course would make it very difficult to kind of do research around it, or you know, build an ecosystem around it. You need to have language for it. So that became a rather popular initiative, and it was more or less unfundable because we got grouped into, I mean, actually we're taking disabilities to talent management, right? So it's actually, we're suggesting talent management programs, but the guys who liked it were the disabilities people, of course. And we were kind of pointed towards those funding channels, and somehow there was a cultural difficulty there, right? Because, you know, when it comes to helping people with disabilities, you usually don't mean that you're going to help them to a job where they earn $200,000 a year. And that would almost seem immoral, because then, you know, they don't need help, right? While if you talk about it as talent management, there are no problems. I mean, okay, we've got people with talent here. They're not they earn very little today, and we found a way to kind of tap into that talent. Now they earn a lot. Great success case, right? That's what we would like to see. Let's see, am I missing something in the chat here?
No, I think you're good. Mei Lin had her hand up briefly. I'm not sure if she had a question. Mei Lin, do you have a question or comment?
Sorry. Yes, I do. I was very interested to see, if we go back not to this picture, but the people-centered one. Yeah.
Yeah.
How the archetypes.ai connect to this.
Yeah, right.
That
Let's
was the question.
Yes, right. So the archetype thingy here, the point with this is that reality is messy. We can use data science to create relevant concepts that help us discuss things, right? So, you know, if I make these archetypes in Florida, based on people there, or I make you know, these archetypes for people in Silicon Valley, the archetypes are going to come out looking different because it's a different demographic, different data sample. It's just a way of reducing the dimensions in a data sample. Right? So those, though, you know, if you're not going to get a lot of, you know, this handy archetype is probably going to be more pushed into the, the strong is probably going to get more pushed into the handy and quick, and the brainy might be kind of broken up in two and so on. It's all about, you know, how can you describe as much as possible of the existing data if you only have 4 archetypes, a 4-dimensional system to put people on the map. So this was the way I saw it, right? I've always thought that people need a language in order to solve things. I mean, we can't solve any problem if we can't talk about it. I mean, every concept needs 3 things. It needs a name so we can refer to it. It needs a definition so that we know what it is or isn't, and it needs a narrative so that we can relate to it, right? And that's what you have here. Now, enter large language models. And the point I'm making in this brief talk is that this is, you know, solving this side with what we would need to create this ecosystem has now suddenly become much easier with the large language models. And also we had, if you remember, those who were in I4J, we had something called Jobly, which was a service that matched, that created jobs, matched people with abilities they didn't know they had, with industries, with needs they didn't know they had, and created a job from that. And that's also an example in the book. So let's look now here at this. We look at this table here, right? This is what was a lot of work creating this table for Fally Grundwag, who is first name on this paper. So now when the large language models came, I built a kind of an agent platform, which is what you see in front of you now, and here is like a chat I had, right? Here is, you know, what are cool. Can you see this, or should I make it a bit bigger, perhaps? There we go. Okay, so see
That's
here.
better.
Yeah, cool abilities. Let's first describe what cool abilities is here. I think I grew outside the screen, not so important though. So, you know, I ask it to create this, and already here, then it has, from the general knowledge that you have just in the language model itself, it has started recreating this table, right? And now I interact with the model. And, you know, I'm asking it to add conditions, right? And it's adding conditions. And here, you know, I start, you know, getting in more research, asking it to make research here, right? you know, these I think I first did like published cool abilities, and then, you know, popular narrative. I think I'm kind of, here I split it into 2 columns, right? And here I ask it to, I think I repeated the question there a few times. Right, there we go. Here sorry about here. I think we further up. Here we go. Here we get ONET. I mean, this database that the government has created with 1,000 occupations, and where they have like, I don't know, a few hundred various entities that they kind of say go for this or that occupation, and it kind of maps out these conditions then with the symptoms that are the disabilities then and the cool abilities, and get, you know, challenges, translate the symptoms to challenges, and then here we can translate the cool abilities to strengths. And then with that, you could actually use ONET to map these conditions onto occupations. I hope I'm not jumping around too much here, but you can see it's like I did this in, I don't know, 2 hours, something. So I mean, things that would have taken an enormous time before, right? And the thing is that also the word cool abilities now, when we wrote the cool abilities paper originally, it was kind of instrumental that one had the keyword cool abilities, so that people could start constructing databases and stuff. But with large language models, we don't need to have those keywords actually, because it understands anyway. You know, you describe something, and it basically becomes like what we call an embedding, right? You can translate the concept into a numeric vector, whether that numeric vector is described by, you know, a paper or by a single word, it's the same, and then it can see where it can find, you know, the match to this, and in the other kind of space of language and knowledge, right? So here, yeah, let's see. If we do, see if we have time for this. Right. This is something I'm doing for the company. We're world leaders on resume builders. I built kind of an agent platform. The patent we got is that each of these can be sort of separate chats, but they can cross-reference each other, so you can co-develop them. So you can do research in one window, and you know, you can maybe make one document here, and then you can make another document there, and they can refer to each other and so on. It's actually pretty powerful. So let's see. I had a saved session. Yeah, let's open that. Right. All right. So here it's like, yeah. Let's see if we can have, how far down does this go? So here we have, then back to the example with, you know, what could a well-earning job for blind people with equalization abilities be imaginative. It doesn't need to be an existing job, but it has to solve a valuable problem, right? And let's just do like that. And yeah, okay, let's just go back there. I would like to do this for you for the start, from the start, so you could see how this kind of grows. It's only that GPT-4o, you have to sit waiting for a lot of time. But basically it gives an answer here, and at the same go it drafts then the document here, right? Actually, no, this is the beginning. So no, it isn't. Anyway, here it suggests 2 jobs, right, on the fly. These were that it came with, and it's yeah. Here's where it starts: search and rescue operations, architectural acoustics consultant, sound-based navigation systems developer, right? And then my tool here also suggests what the user could ask next, but you could ask something completely else, of course. Though I find these suggestions pretty helpful, actually, because it moves the train of thought forward. So I choose here, remove search and rescue, expand them, and let's focus on others, expand them and make bullets that further analyze high-value services that can be provided to solve problems that are difficult today. And you see it does it, right? Now what, if I should critique this, it's the same guy, and here's what I do next, actually. Seems almost a good hearing is what being asked for. That's what it's looking for in the example. Echolocation is more than that. It's 3D sound vision, make it clearer and give examples, right? And then it tries to do that, not terribly successfully, I'd say. And that is probably because there's not much in the training data for this, right? So it comes a bit further away from what it has training data for, and then it kind of starts guessing, right? And coming as close as it can. So, but it's pretty sweet anyway, and it continues here, and at the end of the day, this took me about half an hour to do this together with another guy yesterday, maybe 40 minutes. So we end up here with something that's almost like a presentation of an occupation, echolocation specialist, labor market potential, career prospects, career examples, right? And I'm not suggesting that this is something you could, just go out with today. I mean, it's a lot of work, but what it shows is that this is a very powerful research tool for working on sort of designing jobs for cool abilities, right? And doing the research around it. I would say the tool we're getting with large language models now actually enables the vision of innovating niches for people, for people's particular strengths and profiles, right? And I mean, this is just the beginning. I think that you can imagine when this technology grows, and it's exploding today, right? That you could actually pretty readily start a company that innovates jobs for people. They do the market research here. They kind of find out what's needed. They kind of start trying to find customers for this job out there. Going to companies, don't you need somebody with this that can do this? And look, here's a job that we're suggesting. And if they say yes, well, then you go to the guys with that ability that you've designed a job for, and you say, hey, I'm offering you a livelihood.
Yeah.
And I think it gets easier to make the case also to maybe governments or whatever by doing, with a tool like this, and they will realize, yeah, well, okay, so let's put in some research money and so on, so that one actually can can test how this works. Can we create companies that get wealthy by innovating great livelihoods for their customers, i.e. the workers, the job seekers?
Yeah, David, that's great. I might suggest that you or your company think about sending this to the social sciences unit of the National Science Foundation for, researching the ability to, move this
Yeah.
into the marketplace, because I think that there would likely be both grant money, and then there's a stand up that's kind of like SBIR for small business to
So
incubate prototypes, right?
yeah,
So
actually way back, this was one of the attempts that we made to raise money, was exactly the NSF.
yeah,
I think it started with that the president of the UC San Diego was a part of I4J, right? And we were having the school abilities idea, and we saw that NSF had a call in the kind of disabilities area. And so we asked him, can we submit through UCSD? And he said, sure. And then so we submitted, his faculty submitted, and each university was allowed to compete with one in the final. And ours actually won over the faculties, so that was almost a bit of a problem. But then we joined up with the faculty at UCSD and we wrote the proposal, and it was completely chopped down, right, in the review. And I think partly because I kind of wrote I4J into the proposal, it would have had a better chance if it would have been entirely UCSD faculty. But nevertheless, and then I somewhat later I got a one-on-one with the director of the NSF, who happened to be in the Bay Area, and it turned into an hour, and she was wildly enthusiastic and said, you got to put in this proposal again, and I'll give you introductions. And the problem is an organization like NSF is the top levels don't give the grants. It's the program directors that do. So it was a case of that she saw a cool idea, and my organization is a bit needs this, and I'll help them to get in. And it didn't really work because they are inherently conservative in that kind of structure. So I think DARPA might work.
yeah.
If they would do this, and I would say that will be more for you guys actually, because my company at this point, we're very profitable, but we're like 1,500 people, not more than that, and we kind of building resume builders, and this would be a big step to kind of go in on this bigger vision.
So
Yeah.
I'm just going to say that, we're almost at the bottom of our first hour, and we usually go a little bit overtime to 1 o'clock for overflow questions. And I think this would be a good time to invite some of the people who are on the call with us to ask, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Mark Prensky has his hand up, so I'm going to ask Mark to join us. Mark.
Hey, Mark.
Hi, David. It's been a long time, and
Yeah.
congratulations on everything that you've done. So I'm very interested in this because it's it's very universal compared to what it's very similar to what I'm trying to do for young people.
Right.
And essentially what we're trying to find out, I was very interested that Gary Bowles was on the call. I don't know if he still is.
He had to leave.
We want to find the cool abilities for everyone. That's
Right.
really the goal. The goal is
Yeah.
it has nothing to do with the people just who have dyslexia or other kind of stuff.
Exactly.
It's you want to find your own cool abilities, because then you can go out theoretically and hire yourself an employer, right? Who needs those cool abilities, and that's the piece that isn't here, because now we define everything in groups. So jobs are defined in groups, right? They're plumbers, and there's this and there's that. Everyone is different, but we group them for our useful purposes. And people are defined and skills of people are defined in groups, as you showed in those charts that you had. And obviously nobody fits one thing. We'd love to do it individually.
Right.
That's where we're headed with this stuff, so that you can find out who you are, and an employer can find out who exactly they're looking for, and ideally the system matches everybody up with everybody, kind of thing. So I'm glad you're making progress on that, and through resumes. What I guess the question that I'm having, and that I'd love to discuss with you, perhaps at another time, is how do we create something for people that really helps them, essentially helps them find work that is the right work for them,
Yeah.
right? And we don't, I keep getting these calls that I'm sending to voicemail. And we've gone about it typically from the employer's perspective,
Mhm.
right? We've said these are the jobs that are out there, and then we try to match you with a job. And we very little have done from the person's perspective, from the job looker's perspective,
Right.
from the individual, from the young person. So I don't know that I have a question here, because
Yeah.
my question is, I'd love to learn more about what your company and what you're doing
Yeah,
these days.
yeah. Well, first of all, the cool abilities was actually we called it a semantic innovation, a narrative innovation, because it's very difficult to do things for people with disabilities, because they are the only people who are defined by what they can't do. Everybody else is defined by what they can do, and the language around disabilities, it doesn't have a language for strengths, right? So it's really just by calling it people with disabilities, they get locked in, right? But if you can create this kind of public knowledge around disabilities come with cool abilities, and you list them together, that will actually start neutralizing the disabilities concept. I mean, disability is when you can't do something that you're expected to do without help, that people on the labor market don't need help in order to do, but you need help to do it, right? Then it's a disability. And the day that you become a high wage earner, and then it's no longer an assistive technology, then it's a work tool, and you're no longer disabled, right? So it all depends on the context, right? So that's why, and that's why I agree with you that cool abilities it's actually about everybody's cool abilities, and it's actually about everybody's abilities, and it's actually about creating an economy that tailors jobs individually to people's needs. I mean, we've started getting an economy where one tailors products and services to individuals' needs. And that has, we've gone from mass production to mass personalization. And you should be able to mass personalize jobs. I mean, a job is a service that offers you, the service offers you a livelihood.
Yeah, I think that we're actually behind right now in the whole notion of, Charlie is leaving the position, right? Because he's retiring or he's
Right.
taking another job. And do we want to immediately replace Charlie with someone else with exactly the same job description? Because there are a lot of different ways that you could approach that. And so the question is, do you go out and try to find exactly a replacement for Charlie? Or do you sunset the position and say, how do we want to do this going forward? And is this, could cool abilities, or could a person with, augmented with new technologies be the right way to approach this? There are lots of possibilities, right, that just haven't been, considered. And, it's inertia, right, that keeps us, doing things the way that we're doing them right now. Suzanne had some thoughts, and Suzanne, please join us.
Oh, hi, David. Wow,
Hey.
it's incredible presentation. I sure hope that you could share your slides. I have your book and I've read it. Actually, I carry it with me when I travel. It's
Wow.
outstanding.
Wow, I didn't know
no,
that such people existed. And wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just reminds yourself, or for me personally, that it's okay to be cool. But but have you, in developing your database, which assessments have you used? I've researched this as well very extensively, and I have been unable to really find any particular assessment that incorporates, personality, career. I know colleges have career placements, and I've looked at all of those, but nothing that really incorporates, IQ, EQ, personality, spectrum disorder measurement, right? Because there are so many different spectrum measurements for specific cool, right? But and going forward, right, with AI helping humanity literally force humans to find their true purpose, right? This research will enable that and make this transition so much easier for society and for humanity as a whole looking forward. I think it's needed. And if you need any help with NSF in the social behavioral and computational area, NSF or the TIP directorate, I see a place with ARPA-E on this, right? Or ARPA-H for sure. So health, the ARPA health or IARPA health. I see all kinds of neat places for this. And boy, if people were matched more with their cool abilities and their general abilities, people would be more purposeful and far more successful, I think. So you're doing great work, but I can assist you with this stuff. We could talk offline.
Well, yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for giving me this Kilgore Trout moment. That I don't know if anybody reads Vonnegut, but I sometimes identify. Yeah. So it's nice to meet somebody who actually not only read my book, but even carries it along. That is a bit of a Kilgore Trout moment if you look at the sales numbers. But the I think one really big thing with these large language models, I think nobody's understood how big they are yet. One really big thing is that we can start talking about things that don't have names yet. I can make my own definition here. I gave it the definition cool abilities, and then I in 2 sentences explained what it was, and then build a table with cool abilities, and it did it, right? Because there's no keyword cool abilities in research papers, but you can find the idea in it, which is described in those 2 sentences. But it's described with other words in these papers, but it manages to find that knowledge and match it, right? So that completely new paradigm. I mean, previously it is you have to coin a concept, give it a name, then you have to present it, then you have to sell it, and then people have to start using it, and then you can start building knowledge around it. And while there is sort of all this knowledge is already out there very much, it's only you don't have the keyword for it. And it was an enormous problem, formidable problem to kind of try to do literature search and gather existing things. Here you do it on the fly, right? So you can create hypotheses and test them at sort of rocket speed here. And it means that things that entrepreneurs wouldn't even think about before doing because it's too much of an investment, you can start playing around with. And another thing you can think about, which is in the book, which I think is another fundamental thought in the book that we haven't gone into here, is something that the book calls V-me, the virtual me. Meaning, let's say I take a language model. And then I kind of put it on my own computer. Let's say it's a, you know, Phi 3. We now have language models. The one by Phi 3 is by Microsoft. You can put it on a smartphone. Let's say that it kind of indexes all the knowledge in my computer, all my emails. It gets access to all my social account, everything. Now it should be now it should be able to kind of pretty much emulate me in many ways. So this could be my personal. Hang on. Let's see, just there. Yeah. So now it could be my personal assistant, and it could do a lot of stuff. And hang on, I just got to say here, in a meeting. There we go. So the you could even imagine that there would be like a new industry sector to kind of host my personal model and to help earning money with it. I mean, it's like, you know, Google earns money on selling ads on my searches, right? Well, you could have people doing I could let my virtual me take part in doing customer searches or customer surveys. That will give pretty good results, and then the company that does that would split the profits with me, and I would earn some money on my virtual self, right? And then that company would you know, would be important that there's some infrastructure company. So the one that has my information really is a vault that represents me. This is something I'm worried about, you know, today, that they're trying to build God models that have everything, right? All the knowledge. And I'd say it's much, apart from making it problematic with, you know, well, you know, what's my information, what's their information, I'd say it's more competitive to have like billions of personal models, and then let them, ownership is clear, and let them interact organically, you know, like humanity or any kind of species always has worked. And you get the more kind of ecological dynamic principles for optimizing new solutions and creating. So I think that's the way to go. And I don't know, you know, now you actually can build these VMEs. It was science fiction when I first thought about it 10 years ago, but surprised to see it's not. And I'm almost like expecting that this must happen. And suddenly, you know, matching services get much easier, job matching services like you brought up, right? Because and that's the Jobly in the book, right? It could even suggest to a company. Now, a company, you could have a model for that too, right? And you could let my VME meet their company VME and have some kind of service in the middle that sees if there is a match somewhere between these that be value creating. It's a new kind of infrastructure for that will kind of you almost like help automating the personalization of livelihoods and you know, providing services.
Yeah, well, it sounds like B2B speed dating.
Yeah, exactly. It's only that I'm one of
fairly but even in that.
Somebody else is not.
Somebody else is not.
All right.
I'd like to put
We've
this
got
into a bucket.
Mark back in the conversation, so let's have him come on back in.
Yeah, I just want to add this to what I've been thinking about in terms of young people, David, is what people need is three things: imagination, self-knowledge, and real-world accomplishment. And self-knowledge is the big deal. That's what you're talking about, is that if everybody knows who they are on whatever categories we set up, it's much easier for them to go. And then if you can combine that with people looking for those things, so the the thing that makes the matching hard is that there's so many components. So you have to like the people you work with. That was your first requirement. That's a different component than anything of the skills you might have. And so but I'd like to work with you more about self-knowledge, because that's where that it seems to me that that is lacking enormously in people and in young people, and in trying to find a job, and in trying to find a wife, and trying to find all this kind of thing. That self-knowledge is, and not just in the you know, not just that this leads to this cool ability, but in general. And we just do such a terrible job of helping understand who we are as individuals. So when we talk about people-centered internet, to me, it's yes, let's figure out who people are as individuals, because there's, you know, at the moment 8 billion of us, and we're all different, and we all hopefully fit in somewhere and can create some value at some way. But we really, it's very, very hard to get this self-knowledge. I didn't figure out some things till I was way in my 30s and 40s, that R&D was something I did, or that, you know, and how do we, and you know, you've struggled, I've struggled, we all have these unique things that we don't know what to do with because they don't fit into the categories. Right. And that's, how can we get better at that? Is something that I am very, very, very interested in, especially when you're young.
I think
Especially when you're young.
with the large language models here, but you know, my personal discovery is that you can use it to ask it things, or you can use it to get better at Google searches or whatever. But it gets an order of magnitude more powerful if you engage in dialogue with it.
Mhm.
Like a prolonged back and forth, right? It becomes like a discussion coach. You have to kind of, you discover yourself more by interacting with it, and trying to convince it about something, for example, or you know, it's something that there's so many things one can use these models for.
So let
I
me
mean,
add one more thing, that because you can take this, maybe this will have the to me, the ideal gift that a person can get in the world is somebody who sees you like you see yourself,
right.
and therefore can offer you advice and say, well, why don't you try this? Why don't you try this? Why don't you try this? To which you will say, my other word of the moment is hell yes, right? I'd like to try that. I'd like to go in this direction. And so are there ways that we can employ the LLMs and the AI to just what you were talking about, to explore and come out with, where the output is, you know, this is you, baby, and you should look at all these directions. These are the directions that you should look at that would fit you, or that you might get, not that would fit you, but that you might get excited about.
Right,
Are there
right.
ways that we can go in those directions?
Well, I think that when, I should say, because I don't think it's an if, but when we get our own personal models, I think that gets easier, because then the model has all my information about myself, and I can discuss myself with my own model better, and interact with you know, with others. I should say that I find the present time pretty scary, uh, because you know, everybody is seeing how can we replace people with these models, right? It's if you look at the website air.ai, they sell like you know, AI sales people, or AI you know, call service people, right? And whether the simulation they have there is a fake or not, it's some guy who is a sales bot who manages to sell something to a customer uh, by cold calling. It it will be reality very soon, even if it is a fake there. Maybe it's even reality there. You have 8% of the GDP in India is from call centers. 3 million jobs in the US are call centers. I mean, they can disappear in a year, all of them, because well-trained sales bot is going to be good enough. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be good enough, right? And I think if it comes to stuff like technical support, I would almost prefer a bot. But so I mean, and that's a threat. But the reason why it's a threat is that we're not at the same go with the same extent innovating jobs for people with LLMs.
Mm-hmm.
Just looking at removing ones, and that's why it's a threat. And it's going very fast. And I can't even see that any people out there are thinking or discussing how to innovate livelihoods with the help of LLM. It's just not there. And with the speed things are going with now, it's like I think when the internet came, I could kind of see what the future would look like or imagine it. Maybe I was wrong in parts and right in others. But it's almost difficult for me to envision the future with this. What's going to look like? I don't know. I mean, this with that everybody has their personal VMe is a future. Are we going to get that? I don't know. I think right now it's not on the chart.
Right.
And without that, how's it going to look? Well, and then you have the other things like you get a phone call, it's impossible for you to say if it's a bot or a real person, right? Now that's a frustration. So psychologically, how do you solve that uncertainty? Well, you solve it by putting them on the same footing. So you can either objectify the voice, or you can anthropomorphize you can objectify the person or anthropomorphize the bot. And my prediction would be the latter, because that gives better results. So the moral consequences of anthropomorphizing AI, that's another question, but it might be better than the alternative, or it probably is going to be more successful anyway. Anyway,
we're getting up to
rambling here. Yeah, and I've got
that's all
another.
right. We're getting up to the top of the hour, and Jonathan had an interesting comment in chat, and then I'm going to ask you to kind of summarize what you would like us to focus our attention on. If you give them several different things, the closest thread that I would say to cool abilities is that there's a large body of knowledge in universal design, right? That already exists, right? To take the things that, where people have, fewer abilities than, someone else, right? That actually creates a lot of opportunities, all right, for everyone, all right? That has been the principle of universal design for a long time. Jonathan, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Join
So, David, I really enjoyed your presentation. I got to say, the comment I made was a quote from Thales, a Greek philosopher from a long time ago, who was kind of in line with what Mark was suggesting. He was asked by his disciples, what is the most difficult thing? And he answered, to know thyself. And then another disciple asked him, so what is the easiest thing? And he answered, to give advice to others. And I have to say, when I was listening to your presentation, I was always at this sort of, I was always wondering how much of what you're talking about is going to be self-fulfilling prophecy. How much of when you define somebody by these criteria that are concocted by a program, the person then becomes the person that you tell them that they are, that they are who they think the computer thinks they are, rather than somehow evolving themselves. And I guess that was where I was sort of lost. It was this issue about linguistics, which went from the B.F. Skinner model to the transformational grammar model, that
Right.
language was always being invented by the speaker, that you never say the sentences, you learn transforms, you learn rules, and those rules give you language. Whereas these large language models are doing this sort of, they're just doing a statistical analysis. And
Yeah.
I really wanted to hear you opine about these ideas.
Well, I think it's statistical, obviously. I think that's the way a large I mean, that's the way language develops. It's organic, and it creates concepts for. I mean, we got 5 minutes, so shouldn't go into that. But going back to, and also I think everything that exists has been a self-fulfilling prophecy somehow. I mean, you prophesize that your startup is going to succeed, and then it succeeds, and would it have succeeded if you wouldn't have prophesized about it? You have to have a vision, and then you try to live up to it. Sometimes you have to. I think the important thing is you have to challenge the existing concepts. That's the important thing, and that's how to make them rigid, not rigid, robust. But in this last minute, just one thing: what could PCI do? I think it would be a doable project. If I may just borrow the screen for just a second here, it would be a doable project to kind of try to, one could work collectively with a large language model or several language models to construct what we in another paper called the CODIC, the Coolability Disability Correlation Database. If one can, either through so-called RAG, build a vector database with a lot of knowledge about co-occurring disabilities and strengths, or maybe fine-tune an existing model to try to incorporate that knowledge. But anyway, to kind of expand this table to include many more conditions, and to kind of discuss what could be the columns. And I think such a discussion, such a project, and here I'm advising others because I don't have time to do it myself, I'm afraid. But to discuss, what should be the columns, and that discussion, I think, would kind of help give insight into the possibilities of creating a labor market around cool abilities, which actually is the possibilities of creating a market for individually tailored jobs that are made to match the full profile of individuals, their weaknesses and strengths and passions, right? And I think this will be a very kind of hands-on, easy thing to start doing in a group. Save this in some place, and then people can sit with their language models and try to add rows to it, and discuss if one can add columns to it, and make personal copies of it that one then plays around with, and so on. I think that would be that will give a lot of insight.
Very good. David, we'll put it out there for the community to think about as they listen to the recording. Some people, clearly listen to this afterwards. There are hundreds of people on the list. Only a handful can join for live tapings. But we're delighted that we could be with you today and you with us. And this was a really interesting exploration of bringing us up to date on your thinking. So we gratitude for doing that, and don't be a stranger. Please join
Yeah.
us on calls where we have because I4J is on distribution here,
Right.
and if you see a speaker that you're interested in, we would be delighted to have you join
Yeah.
us in this question.
I will do that. My apologies for having turned into a caveman. It's like, you know, I got ADD, and with that comes hyper focus. And, you know, when I
Well, you
start.
have cool abilities, right? Right?
Yeah.
So there you go. You and you turned them into superpowers. So good for you.
Yeah.
What's your current email, David?
Well, David at triplej.org is still good. And that one is followed by Tanya Alvarado, who remains my personal assistant. So she will tell me once a week if I get emails there. It's part of the ADD that I kind of get so distracted by emails and so on. It's almost difficult to get hold of me. It is difficult to get hold of me, and my apologies for that. Anyhow, I got to take off. I've got another meeting in 1 minute.
All right. Thank you so much for being with us, everyone. David, thanks for joining us. Cheers. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.